go into any great length of who the people are. If they want to tell you more about themselves, fine. But since our time is very limited, I will let them judge what they want to say about themselves and what they want to say about the subject, which is how we can learn from early times and what the conflicts were then, and perhaps resolve some of the conflicts now more easily. And so I'm going to take the panel alphabetically, and so Victor Contreras, would you be the first speaker, please? And I'll tell you in 5 minutes, and we'll wind up about it.
One of the things that, well, first of all, my name is Victor Crossway Contreras, and I like to use the middle name because that's the side of my mother where my roots tie into San Diego. Crossway's a known name here historically. But Crossway wasn't when we got here. We married somebody who was already here, which was Lopez. And Lopez, trace that back to Juan Francisco Lopez, who was a soldier with a Spanish contingency with some here with Paucera. But right there, we start with a problem. And the problem is we identified him as a Spanish soldier, but in fact, we were already mezclados. The Spanish had been in Mexico for 200 years. So the majority of the contingency that came with Paucera were in fact not Spanish by birth, Spanish by political affiliation, because they were our conquered people. The vast majority of the contingency were mestizos, mixed blood, soldiers. Though very few of them were actually Spanish born. And we were some of the priests and some of the upper echelon of the military who were the only truly born Spanish. The rest were mezclados, they were mixed blood. Such was the case with my ancestry, although we identified them as Spanish. The history of California, in particular here in San Diego, as one of cultures collided. And the conflicts that arose above that. And we repeated a cycle, repeatedly, that repeats today. And that is of the newcomers coming and becoming dominant. The newcomers have become dominant and become disrespectful of the culture that is preceded, therefore creating conflict. Yet, how does the conflict resolve? Repeatedly, we are very sexy people. They resolve conflict by breathing, which is exactly what we repeatedly done. The Spanish came and disrespected the culture that preceded them. And what did they do? We breeded. The Mexicans came and disrespected yet the new culture that had been established, because that in fact created a new culture, a culture that's unique to California, which is oftentimes neglected both in U.S. and Mexican renditions of history. Why? Because the new culture came in, the Mexico culture, that disrespected that, and we breeded. Then the Americans came. On contract, hey, we signed contract, we signed a declaration of peace in the Mexican-American War and promised to respect all of these land grants, respect the Spanish language. Totally disregarded that, disrespected the people, disrespected the culture, and then we made babies. And what's going on today? Talk to anybody from the Midwest and back east, and they're, oh, those Californians and the earthquakes, and they disrespect us, and they come over here and make babies. And I don't say that very flippantly. We have some of the very standard love stories where we say love conquers all and love is the answer. And in essence, in fact, that is true. The major conflicts that we've repeatedly seen as two cultures collide together here in California, how do they get resolved? They don't get resolved at this level. They get resolved at the next generation by creating yet a different culture, a new culture that comes from the blending And it's not, it actually isn't so much as a blending, because it doesn't really create a joint, it creates something totally new, a totally new and different culture. One of the things that I recently experienced was a wedding in my family. Now, taking into consideration how we have traditionally partied, because we many times travel great distances to go to, especially if you go back 100 years or 150 years, you were traveling 2-3 days to get to an event, a wedding. You didn't go there for a half hour or for an hour reception afterwards. You went there and partied for days. So this is still the case. My nephew got married last week at 4-day party. Started Friday, ended Monday. Okay, came out of a cruise ship out of LA, came down, the ceremony took place in Ensenada, and then we came back. This is not unusual for my family. My family grew up with long parties that lasted days, because that was our culture. That's why. But there's a reason for that. And that was because people having to travel. Let's travel. That's what we want. Make the party worth a little bit longer than the trip.
You want to take a few questions, though, or you got it?
Absolutely.
Anybody got any questions?
No, I was going to say that something very, very interesting and very, very true. It does happen. I remember talking to my mother, and she had gone in Ensenada to some weddings because they had been out there, and the roads are all, it rained and the roads were all flooded, and she was there for 3 months. I mean, this is what happened. So that's just recent. I mean, recently.
Yes.
Do your children have the same feeling for the culture, your culture, or have they kind of dispersed and doesn't really interest?
Well, I personally don't have children, but my nephews. For example, the sign-in album at the wedding party had a lot of pictures of the couple. A lot of the pictures of the couple were taken in Old Town. So it was very much with an awareness that, hey, these are our roots, this is our family, and that we come from significant roots. One of the standards that was very much a part of my family, and as we grow up, donde vas estás representando la familia. Wherever you go, you're representing the family.
Who was the stronger in that first mix? The woman who was here and gave the guy who came in a place to be, or the man with his ideas? Which was the strongest in the family?
Or is it a blend?
Well,
No blends.
well,
Oh, always a blend.
generally speaking, my family focuses a lot on Philip Crossway, being an Irishman who first came here, came here during the Mexican period, and became ingrained into the culture that was here. He was actually second alcalde of San Diego under Mexican rule, an Irishman. Okay, it was a significant thing. He and his wife, Josefina Lopez, butted heads continually, even to the point at the end of their life they were separated. The resolution, again, was not at the point of conflict, was at the next generation.
So she was a strong woman.
We butt heads real good.
All right, we can have some more discussion at the end if we have time, but I would like to make sure that all of the panel get to say a few words. Connie, would you like to? This is Connie Gunther.
Actually, I had something to read to kind of summarize it, just to make it a little more concise about the family. I come from, again, the descendants of Old Town. There's not too many stories written about the Don Pisarin Cota, which is the family that they had come into money. They came from France, loaned money to Bandini to build a house, and so he was a prominent business person in his time. And the family is still in La Paz. We still have ranches, so we're very connected, U.S. and Mexico. And as I trace my roots, they're kind of all over the world now. When I start thinking about English, we have English, we have French, we have Basque, we have now with my husband.